when we planned this mastermind, in my mind, we get together weekly on Zoom calls. But for me, there's really a component of it that's super important to have in-person events to get to know the people on a deeper level. Also, kind of get out of your environment, because as you elevate to where you want to be with regards to education, finances, different levels of business, you kind of leave people behind and your circle gets smaller and smaller on who is a like-minded individual with you that is still working towards the pursuit of similar goals or shared pursuits, if you will, of expansion.
How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
Welcome to another episode of the Tactical Empire. I'm joined today by Sean Ryder. How are you doing, man?
I'm rocking and rolling. I was just in Charlotte, North Carolina the end of last week, so thankfully got back late Friday night, got to spend the weekend with my family. I don't mind traveling, but like 2 days is the max. Like I said about my vacation, I like my daily life. So I actually feel off when I'm away from it, but great trip. So
good. Love to hear that, man.
All right. And you guys are rolling. I just listened to one of the podcast episodes that dropped, and it reminded me that you're on a running program. And then I saw your story yesterday of running in the grounding sandals. So I didn't know you were going to run in them as well.
Yes. I haven't had any other shoes on in 2 months.
Lord.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
I'm going.
It makes you laugh. I don't even know what to think about it.
Minimalistic for sure. We'll see if I wear them.
Go ahead.
We'll see if I wear them at the meetup or not. I don't know. Might have to be a little more professional than that.
Maybe. Well, that's funny. That's funny that you brought it up. Talk about travel and talk about the meetup. That's actually what today's episode is, guys. We're recording in the middle of August. We are 2 months away from the second Tactical Empire in-person meetup for the Inner Circle. The first one was in Birmingham, Alabama back in April. So mid-October, we're heading to Scottsdale, Arizona. Is it going to be 100-something degrees in Scottsdale in October? I don't know. I hope not, but
I don't think so. I don't know what the weather is, but I don't think it's 110.
All right. Well, I'm excited, man.
Nice.
I know we got some plans lined up here, but we want to talk a little bit about, what we're going to be doing at the meetup, what the purpose of these meetups are. And if you're in the Inner Circle, obviously we expect you to make that trip. We want you to make that trip. But if you're on the fence about joining the Inner Circle, this is a good time. Get in 1 or 2 months early and then meet us in Scottsdale, Arizona, and walk away with a game plan for the end of 2024, heading into 2025, which, depending on the headlines you read, the world's falling apart or the world's crushing it. So we want you to be on the crushing it side of things, and we can help you plan that out. So Jeff, you're taking the lead on what we're going to be working on and doing in Scottsdale. So let's just talk to the people about why this meetup is going to be something that they want to be at.
Well, I mean, when we planned this mastermind company or business or whatever that we were trying to put together, I think that in my mind, we get together weekly on Zoom calls and things like that. But for me, there's really a component of it that's super important to have, like in-person events to get to know the people on a deeper level, and also kind of get out of your environment. Because like I talk about a lot, as you elevate to where you want to be with regards to education, finances, different levels of business, you kind of leave people behind and your circle gets smaller and smaller on who is a like-minded individual with you that is still working towards the pursuit of similar goals or shared pursuits, if you will, of expansion. And that circle shrinks as you continue through your journey. And so, I mean, that's what our Inner Circle is really all about. It's a group of people that are continuing to move the ball or move the needle, whatever you want to talk about, in their business, in their investment portfolio, in their families. And so it's really good to just be surrounded by a group of people, and get to know the people in person. So we have to get on planes and go get in rooms with people, because it's harder and harder to find people that share the same desires and are going to push you to the different levels and the heights that you want to be at with regards to information, with regards to your pursuit of goal setting and things like that. And so when we formulated the business, like, you don't like traveling a ton, right? We've been a part of a lot of masterminds. I was a part of a very expensive mastermind that we met every single month. I think that's too much. I think it's too much, because our ethos is be great husbands, great fathers, and like make a fuck ton of money, right? I don't think traveling all the time is something that anyone in our group wants to do, and be away from their kids and things like that. And so I think 2 is the right amount of meetups annually, just because it gives us the time, 6 months in between. You can really plan some serious targets. But then we get back together and for 2 or 3 days as a group. And a lot gets done in those 2 or 3 days, from a motivation and energy standpoint, an education standpoint, a planning strategy standpoint. Because we're gonna lay out the tactics and the plans to get you moving on the next level of what you want to be doing over that next 6 months. And then it also assigns like accountability to you, because the people say things in that room that you're going to hold yourself and adhere to. Because I think a lot of what we do, we provide a lot of tactics and strategies and education on the back end, but ultimately it's about what standards you're going to hold for yourself. And that dictates your results. And so having a group to be surrounded with, whether it's the people in the group that push me, or whether it's the group that push each other as well, having that level of accountability is super powerful. And so, if you look back at Birmingham, there was a lot of declarations made on like the standards that those guys were going to hold for different things, whether it was their fitness, their nutrition, their alcohol intake, their real estate purchases. So there was a lot of gauntlets thrown at that first one, and you've seen the progress that's come out of it. Because like almost to a man, the things that I remember being said in that room that people were committed to doing have been done, if not exceeded already. So I'm super excited to see everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like, I actually love traveling. I don't love traveling without my family. So when I do things like this, I really like that, 6 month spread between what we've created and the 2 to 3 days of travel. And what I like most there's a few things that I like most, but what I like for myself first and foremost is, I have a morning routine here when I wake up. But to say that I do it perfectly every single morning would be a lie. And that's because I have 2 dogs and I have 2 kids. So even though they're fairly consistent on waking up, especially this summer with having my daughter home a lot of the weeks when she was out of school for the first time, my mornings have been cut short. So, I might rush my coffee, which for me, drinking coffee, I don't really drink it for the caffeine. I drink it for the ritual of making the coffee. We have a really nice coffee maker, and sitting down and enjoying that on the front porch while I read the Daily Stoic. And so like last week when I traveled to Charlotte, I've been reading the Daily Stoic. I walked away from it a little bit ago and then picked that habit back up when I traveled to Blowing Rock, North Carolina 2 months ago. But when I went to Charlotte, I could actually sit and kind of like meditate on the passage for the day. So the one thing that I like about traveling, especially for the inner circle meetups, is one, I can have an extended morning routine and kind of find my balance back with why I do those things. And I enjoy that because I'm not being rushed by anyone else. The second thing is what you said is my friend circle I've always had a small, tight knit friend circle. It's just something that I've always done. I don't view myself as an energized extrovert that wants to be friendly or friends with everyone. So I've always had a tight knit circle. But as I've kind of progressed through the levels of life, parenthood, marriage, and to be quite frank, wealth building, my friends circle has shrunk. I have a few older than me friends locally, males that I speak to about those things, but there's only so much we can speak to about the same topic over and over again on our project. So with the inner circle, we have, 60 men in there, and I can engage with someone different at these meetups than I've been engaging in the group or on the calls or whatever it may be. So I like going to the meetups and meeting 1 to 5 of the other men that I haven't connected with. And to be frank with you, like I knew going into Birmingham, I knew of Justin Harach and I knew of what he was doing, but I've never talked to him personally. At that meetup, I got to see him present to the group with you on the second morning. And then coming out of that meetup, I texted him, got on a call with him. Now, we're business partners. That happened
Right.
within 90 days of leaving Birmingham. So going to Scottsdale, that's only going to be the second time I've ever met him in person. We're going to be able to sit down and talk about how do we accelerate our investment portfolio. So not only from a focus and game planning situation, these men can come out of Scottsdale in that type of situation. They can come out with potentially meeting their next business partner, which is going to pay dividends essentially in perpetuity if you never close that business down or the investments down. So that's what I'm most excited about is 1, I get a little bit of time to myself. 2, I get to connect with the men. We're going to be doing something pretty cool at this one that we wanted to do in Birmingham, but didn't get to. And there's going to be a little bit of a physical component. And I think for men specifically, I think putting each other through, it's not going to be like some crazy grueling event course or whatever you want to call it, Tough Mudder, but we are going to have a little physical component on the one morning. I think for men, that's a really good connecting piece. So why don't you tell the people what we have planned for that?
Well, yeah, you're gonna call me out, huh? I was gonna surprise everybody, but it's okay. No, I hooked up with my.
We're not having a physical component.
No, I contacted some local resources and called in some favors from some people I've got out there. And they gave me some really good recommendations for summiting a couple hikes. So we're going to hike up a couple mountains or a mountain and just exercise a little bit, network that way, get out of the classroom, not do the same old boring stuff.
Yes.
So we'll have some stuff planned for that as far as being able to just talk about business and roadblocks and things that you're gonna be able to overcome, but like we'll do it while we're hiking and kind of create those bonds that way too. So nothing crazy, just everybody's.
I can't believe you're going to keep that a secret. Like that's a serious little hike. So you're going to let some of these guys show up with like business boots and they weren't going to bring anything else. So they're going to be either going to be doing this hike in nice business boots or shoes or grounding sandals. You got to let some of these guys know they need to prepare by bringing some comfy shoes to hike in.
Well, I don't want to share too much information because I don't want to scare anybody off either. And so like I feel like when people have all the information, they subconsciously fucking self-select themselves out of it. They're like, oh, I missed my plane, Jeff. And I'm like, oh, that's convenient. That's convenient.
Well, let's talk to those people. Let's say someone is on the fence, whether it is because of a physical component or maybe they are like me. Actually, they don't like, I seriously do not like the act of leaving my family. The fact that my daughter was home last Wednesday when I got in my car to drive to Charlotte and my mother-in-law had to come over, like I literally gave my daughter so many hugs, and even like driving away, I rolled down the window, like hopefully every dad does that, but it is a physical pain to my heart. And so I think that's a very easy one for us that have young kids to say like, oh, I just don't want to leave my family. And it's work for me to leave these things, to leave my family, to go to these things. So let's talk to the men that might be on the fence. If you're in the inner circle, you're already investing in the education. You see us on Zoom, you see us on phone calls, you see us posting. That's great. It's not the same as peeling us away from our own zip codes, meeting in the middle of the country with other like-minded men. So let's talk to them. Hopefully we've said a little bit about what they could get out of it, whether they believe that or not. They won't know until they're actually there. But ultimately, what would you say to a man just giving them the 60-second pitch on like, you need to get your ass there?
Well, I'm super glad you asked that though, because like everybody does that. They're like, well, I'm part of the group. I go to the weekly calls, whatever, that's good enough. And they make, I've ran masterminds long enough, as you know, that I've seen every excuse in the book. And some people do that shit. They're just like, oh well, my business has this going on, and so they make an excuse, whether it's like, oh, I didn't want to leave my kids or whatever. If your kids are what's tugging on your heartstrings, I tell you, you owe it to them to pursue the next level of what you're capable of and work yourself into a better version of yourself. Like if you stay where you are, you're going to stay where you are. And so ultimately getting away from your normal environment, your normal routine, and focusing for a few days on these principles of like how you grow your business, how do you grow yourself, how do you become better in all areas, how, whether it's financial education or whether it's just like the standards that you're going to hold yourself to over the next 6 months, whatever it is. Like if you don't spend time focusing on those, you can get caught up in the mundane busyness of life. And what happens after you do that is you slip into year after year of like being in the same place. And that's the absolute antithesis of what we preach, teach, and aspire to be. Like we're trying to compress time so that you can be your at the position you wanted to be when you were 60 years old when you're 40 instead. If we're talking financial position, hopefully not physical position, Jesus. But like if we're talking about finances, we're trying to compress time so you can live that life right now instead of but when you start making excuses or you allow these things to get in the way of your personal development and your growth, or like so some employees out for that week so you don't think you can be out too. Like those are the typical excuses that we make for ourselves, right? Oh, I'm too busy. Like I've got too many fires going on. It's a really important week at work, in the business, or whatever. I mean, you can make any excuse you want. But ultimately you have to understand that if you don't actively pursue the growth that you aspire to, you're going to move slower than you should. It's going to take longer than it should. And you're going to deal with shit that you shouldn't have had to deal with, rather than just taking action, focusing on what you need to do. You're going to leave the meeting invigorated. You're going to leave the meeting with a plan. You're going to leave the meeting clear on what you need to do. You're going to go home and probably spend more focused time with your kids. Anyway, you didn't want to leave your kids, but now you're home Saturday morning and you got the whole weekend to download, and you've got the whole weekend to be present with them as well. And so, I mean, I just think that if you're not focused on your growth and in making that investment, they've already made the monetary investment in kind of raising their hand and saying they wanted to learn, they wanted to grow, and they want to be part of the group. They need to continue the investment in themselves to take the time to follow the process, I would say.
Well, I think this goes back to what we've been saying on some of the more recent episodes, podcast episodes, particularly the one, what's been on Jeff Smith's mind, what's been on Sean Ryder's mind. Two great episodes. Listen back to those last week. Fantastic. I think everyone should listen to them. And what I mean by what we're reinforcing is the time of year that we're doing this meetup. We're doing it in mid-October. And I think it'd be a very easy time of year for men to blame, one, the holiday seasons that are coming up, two, the paralysis of what's going on in the world and the fact that no one knows what's going on in the world. So we have an election coming up in November. So from, now to November, and then November to January, and maybe the changeover. Well, there's going to be a new president no matter what, because the current president isn't rerunning. So I think we need to have a plan now more than ever, is basically what I'm saying. And so you can get on the Zoom calls. That's all fine and dandy, but they only last an hour. Like you're not going to be able to get as in depth on your plan with the right men in the group from a Zoom call. So even though we do our best on those, we have time set aside to make sure that every man is leaving that meetup with a very specific plan of action. And I don't care that people say now's the most important election of all time. What I'm saying is take control of your own house, which is what I like to focus on. We all know that. And now's the most important plan of your lifetime. So if you have not had a clear-cut plan for the 4Fs, family, fitness, finance, and freedom, or you've had a half-assed one, now it's time to put together the best one. And we're going to be doing that in Scottsdale. I promise you that. Sure, you might not want to connect with men. Fine, so be it. That is what it is. But you're going to be leaving with a fucking plan. And that's what you need at the end of 2024. No doubt about it.
Yeah, most people walk around without absolute clarity on direction, and that's why they don't go anywhere. Because that's why you see like Groundhog Day in businesses, or they have the same revenue year over year over year. You and I have both mentored a lot of business owners, especially in the gym space, and you'll see them like flatline with revenue, and they'll do whatever 300K for 10 straight years, and it's because they don't have clarity of direction. And that happens in every industry, every pursuit, every business. And it's just like the guys who are trying to do real estate investing, and they're like, well, I'm going to buy one house this year. And you're like, well, why not buy 5? And when pushed to realize that they can move at a faster pace, they can do more, they realize that there's more that they're leaving on the table with their lower expectations of themselves. And so I just love the accountability that comes into being in the same room as the people, and then making those declarations of like, this is who I'm going to become, this is what I'm going to do. And then you have to hold that standard. One of the most powerful things about the group to me, because I know for a fact that like, I don't open my mouth and say I'm doing anything to you guys that I don't fully intend on following through with, because that's just really important to me. So while it allows me to push, it also allows me to be very thoughtful in what I take on too.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. It's gonna be good.
Always leading from the front, Jeff. And as you say that, like, it is amazing to think back, not to call men out by names, but there was one man who came to the meetup in Birmingham, first time he's ever gone to a mastermind meetup. And he was on the verge of leaving his job to focus on him and his wife's business full time. And he wanted to dabble in real estate and had the idea of one property. And, 4 months later, now we're in August, he's left that job. He got paid to leave that job. He was able to touch and liquidate his government qualified plan. He created his own family banking system. And then he immediately leveraged that banking system to acquire like a 4 or 5 door property. So yes, it's a singular property, but it's got 5 doors in it. Like, that dude went from being a W-2 worker hustling for a side business to being fully in control of his business, being fully in control of his finances, and now owning a very nice long-term asset. And all that was done from attending one 48-hour event. So the last thing I need to say is, fellas, get your ass to Scottsdale in the middle of October. If you have any questions about the details, hit up Jeff or I, and we'll get you in the inner circle, and we'll get you on a plane to Scottsdale. Jeff, anything else, or send the people out?
Nope. Like and subscribe our Facebook channel, the Tactical Empire Podcast. And you can hit us up in Facebook. We've got a free community out there, the Tactical Empire community. The Inner Circle is a private page, a paid group. If you're interested in that, just shoot me a DM. I'm happy to chat with anybody anytime if you have any questions. So have a great week, kick ass, and we'll see you next week.